thank you so much for calling. And yeah, what's on your mind? You're deconstructing. You're scared of hell. You want to elaborate on that and maybe have a conversation about it?
Uh, uh, yeah. So I think in May really is when this happened. I started like questioning my faith, I guess, and I feel like the more I looked into it, the more like the less and less sense believing in God kind of makes. But like I don't want to really consider myself an atheist or like stop believing in God because I just have this fear of, what if I'm wrong? Or, what if this is like I'm confused or just struggling with my faith or something. And because if I'm wrong about this, you know, I could spend eternity in hell just for some dumb mistake. And I really don't want to do that. Yeah, that's,
So you are not alone in this. Lots and lots and lots of people grapple with this. I was fortunate in that I didn't have to because my former religion didn't have a concept of hellfire, but I know Paul's did, and many other
I
Christians
did.
did. So,
Your
yeah.
story sounds exactly like mine, Trinity. So I would say, first of all, I think you're handling this exactly right. You should absolutely know that I've talked to dozens, if not hundreds, of people, and this we. And you're sharing my story, and the story is much the same. That the fear of hell is kind of that last thing to go. I think you are handling this very well, in that uh, you are you're not running away from the faith, because I think you understand that would be a mistake. So let me just reassure you that should you continue to not believe in God, you don't have to adopt any label you don't want to adopt. You can continue to hold belief in a different form. Don't let anyone force you down accepting a label, because that's not important. What's important is what beliefs you hold. So the other thing to then now is, as it was for me, was eventually figuring out that if I sincerely don't believe in the Christian God, and it will take a while for you to really internalize that or not, that hell therefore doesn't exist. So this becomes a, if you come to that conclusion, hell is an irrational fear, and that doesn't help, because all fears are to some extent irrational fears. So labeling it as irrational didn't help me at all, but it was one of those things that eventually you come to accept that, oh, I'm intellectually I'm not convinced of that God, so therefore the hell consequence is more part of indoctrination. What I
Yeah.
did when I got to the point of where I lacked intellectual assent, when I could no longer say I intellectually assent to there being a Christian God, I spent a few months just praying and saying, like, look, God, intellectually, I don't think you're there, but I want to give you every chance to show me. And I don't know if you've started on that part of your journey or if that's something you've considered, but if you, it sounds like you're very sincere about this. It sounds like you're struggling with this. I would recommend you take some weeks or months and just offer it up in prayer, just to see if there is an answer back. But eventually, if that silence continues and that silence continues, you need to at least entertain the fact that the silence is continuing, because no one is receiving the call. So, Trinity, is that where you're at right now? Are you offering? Have you moved? So it's no longer intellectual now. You're just in the crying out mode, or are you on a whole different journey than I was?
uh, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, where I've just been really praying about it. But I feel like nothing's really, I don't know, God's just been silent. And, well, maybe not. The sermon today was kind of about health, so maybe that's kind of why I'm freaked out over again.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. So
I
Trinity,
don't know, maybe that's just fine.
by the doctrine that you were raised in, or that you accepted prior, or accepted up until recently, could hell exist without God existing?
Um, I I don't think so. I don't think so.
Does your church define hell as separation from God?
Yes.
So it would be pretty tough to be separated from something that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about my pup. I'll let Eric take over.
Sure. So, hey, Trinity, let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, I wanna kind of cap off what Paul just mentioned there because Paul says some things that I absolutely agree with, and the two big ones, I'll condense them down to two big things. First off, don't worry about labels. Don't worry about agnostic or theist or atheist or whatever. You're just Trinity. All right. So don't worry about what you're calling yourself right now. And my second thing is take your time with the decision making process as you mull it over. There's no rush on this. So those are the two things that I want to like really, really stress to you. Don't worry about labels and don't worry about time. Just do what you need to do for yourself. But the thing I want to ask you is, let's say you had a magical, not magical, sorry, you had a switch on the back of your head, and the switch is up for experiencing emotions, and you can flip that switch down and completely turn off all your emotions, turn off your fear, turn off your joy and your sadness, and just become a purely intellectual person devoid of any type of emotional baggage. Let's say you reach back, then you flip that off. Where would your intellect, where would your logic take you? Do you believe a God exists? Do you not believe a God exists? Do you believe a hell exists? Do you not believe a hell exists? Do you think your religion is true? Do you think it's not true? Like, take it wherever you want to go. Where would your logical mind take you if you could just temporarily turn off those emotions?
Um. Sorry. Can I just like think for a second?
Take your time. That might be a new question that somebody's never asked you. If you're not ready to answer it, that's totally fine. Might be something to take away and think of. But really, really think about, hey, if I could turn off my emotions just for 5, 10, 20 minutes and just think things through, where would my brain take me?
I feel like um I probably lean more towards like the atheist side. I just feel like there's so many contradictions in the Bible, and like it's gonna sound really stupid, but I
Oh,
like
go ahead.
wasn't younger creationist and all that until like a few months ago, and
Me too.
I love science, and I always had.
Me too.
I've been like looking into it and like evolution and all that and learning, and I feel like the more I learn, the less sense the Bible makes, like logically.
Yeah.
To me, at least, yeah, I feel like it's just kind of the emotional part that's holding me back. So I'd probably end up more as an atheist if if I like flip that switch, you know.
Yeah.
Probably.
Do you think like I don't know if you heard the beginning of the show, we talked to an individual about Pascal's wager, and this is basically the core of the issue here is that religion, most religions, Christianity, Islam, and those are the big two. I think Judaism has a afterlife concept, like laying down their forefathers. But anyway, Christianity, Islam, they have an afterlife built into it because the concept of an afterlife, it does a lot to manipulate people emotionally and keep people locked in. They when people start experiencing doubts, their intellect and their rationality is trying to break through. They have that threat looming over them, and like I said, that's where Pascal's wager comes from. It's basically just we you might as well wager with infinite reward and infinite punishment. You might as well wager on belief because it's the safest choice. And personally, I'm not telling you to think this, but personally, I think a God who expects that type of intellectual process out of a follower is a God who's not concerned with honesty, not concerned with integrity, not concerned with uh, nurturing and harvesting actual people who are well-rounded and willing to make choices for honesty's sake. But that's just my personal position. And like I said, I didn't grow up in a religion with a hell concept, but the worst thing that could happen to me was everlasting annihilation, destruction. Once I'm dead, I'm dead. And one thing that helped
Yeah.
me get over that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. That's
Go ahead.
like another thing is if God doesn't exist and there's no heaven or there's no hell, then like what happens after we die? Um, I've heard like, you just kind of just stop existing. I feel like that's really hard to wrap my head around, I guess. And almost, I don't know, that sounds
Yeah.
terrifying as well,
Yeah.
or like bad.
Yeah. That's a very real and human thing. And we all, almost all of us universally, we all look at that same thing and go, wow, that's kind of scary. But if you really look at it, we were already in that state once before. All of us at one point never existed. We were there already. And sure, maybe we want more centuries to live. Maybe we want to experience more things. I want to live at least a few hundred years. I'm not going to get everything I want out of life. Um, that's a very human desire to have, and that's a very human fear to have. And
Yeah, it's that thought. You just want to think about, like, was it painful or was it scary before you were born?
yeah,
That's how I had to reconcile it with myself. Is like, what was it like to be Paul before I was born? Was it a like, and that's eventually what it will be like. Ceasing to be isn't painful, isn't scary. We definitely have FOMO. We'll be sad that the party will continue without us, but it's actually ultimately, uh, the non-existing isn't something to be scared of. There's certainly it's more how we end our time, and whether we got to do everything we want here, but there's really not much to be scared of if you take the hell part away, because none of us had to be afraid of our pre-birth state. That may not ring true to you now. For me, it was something that had to. It took. It's not encouraging news, but like, it does take some of us months or even years for that hell fear to fade. All thing myself and thousands of others would just be able to assure you is that eventually it does. Eventually it will fade, because it's an emotional response, not an intellectual response. Does that make
the
any
way
sense, Trinity?
Yeah, I think so.
the way I look
I
at it,
guess.
Trinity. Sorry, I just want to. Let me cap
Go
off
ahead.
what Paul just said, and I'll let you resume. So the way I look at it is, yeah, sure, I want to live longer. If I had the option, I would live forever with the option to terminate my own life whenever I want. That's the only conditions under which I would accept immortality, is if I could kill myself at any point, because I don't want immortality. Because there will be a point where there will be nothing else to do. There'll be nothing else to learn. There'll be no more joys to be had. And it'll just, at that point in my mind, if I were to think about, what would I be like billions and billions of years in the future, all I can imagine is agony living that long. So I would only accept that type of life if I could end it at any point. But realistically, I maybe want a few more hundred years. I want to do a few more things. It scares me that one day I will die and not be able to see the new Star Wars movie. Like things like that are going. I have wants and I have needs, but I also have other wants and needs. Like I want to be a millionaire. I want to have a larger house. I want to have, I want to go to this particular country. I'm never going to experience those things. I'm never going to be a millionaire, most likely. I'm never going to be a billionaire. I'm never going to have a huge mansion or a huge plot of land. And so for those things that are outside of my reach, I lower my want and my need for them. It's just kind of a coping mechanism that I use. It's like I don't have high wants and needs for those things. And I encourage you to think about living forever, living longer, going to heaven in the same terms. Treat it like being a billionaire, treat it like having a mansion. Do you really need that? You might want it, but if it's something that might not be attainable, if your rational mind, your intellect is telling you that that's not going to happen, then in my opinion, it's best to come to terms with that and then lower that want and need for that, because it's outside of reach. It's outside of reality. Um, anyway, I'm sorry. You were about to mention
And,
something?
and if I could just tag one thing on top of that, is that
Sure.
the way we value things in this planet, in this world, in capitalism, is the more rare something is, the more valuable it is. When something is ubiquitous, when we can get it anytime we want, we don't actually value it. It's when something is scarce, that's when we actually treasure each day. So if it's a common Christian and religious trope, is that, like, well, we treat this life as if it's dirty rags, because we're looking forward to the next one. But if you can free yourself of that view, you can actually value each day here and understand that this is the one and only life that we're guaranteed to have. Hey, if there's a bonus life later, cool. But this is the one and only life we know we have. So we need to maximize what's happening here and now and not worry about future stuff. So I will leave my thoughts there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's you want to give us any closing thoughts, any follow-up questions, anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. I just had another question that kind of I thought of when you were talking about how, like, flip the switch and turn off your emotions so you could kind of think things through rationally. Like, I feel like another thing that's kind of holding me back from fully, like, thinking through everything logically is every time I try to, like, I don't know, kind of, sorry, I'm really bad with words.
Your time.
Every time I start thinking about not believing, I just get, like, this overwhelming sense of guilt, I guess. Like I'm betraying God, or or like my family, like mom raised me Christian, she raised me to be better. Why am I doubting stuff like that?
Yeah.
I guess.
Were you born and raised in your religion?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to come over because your formative years were spent immersed in that type of environment. And maybe this might be something to reflect on. And I'll get back to that in a moment, but the turn your emotions off thing, try to maybe exercise that 5-10 minutes a day. Just sit down with yourself, get into like maybe a meditative state, put the emotions aside just briefly. I'm not saying turn them off completely, just put them aside just briefly, and then try to ponder and process and think about these questions. And then once you're done, those emotions are right there. You can pick it back up and resume being an emotional creature. But you, the environment you grew up in has conditioned you to have your emotions and all these things intertwined along with these threats. Other religions do it too. Islam does it, Judaism does it, Mormonism does it, Jehovah's Witnesses, my old religion. Like I said, the worst that they could threaten us eternally with was death. But if I did leave and they threatened, not directly, it's all implicit in the publications, they threatened to take away my family and friends. My social circle is completely removed from me if I decided to leave. And lots of Jehovah's Witnesses currently live under that very real consequence of if they leave, they lose everything they know and care about. These are things that are baked into these religious structures to keep you in the state you're in right now, too worried to think about things clearly without being overwhelmed by the idea of being tortured forever, the idea of losing your family, the idea of pissing off a God who somehow doesn't value honest critical thought. And maybe one thing you want to think about, like I said, you were born in this religion by pure chance. You're in Alaska, Christian religion sounds like to me. We didn't ask you for many details. I'm assuming it's a Christian religion. You have a hellfire doctrine.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were born in Saudi Arabia and you're going through the same process. You would be concerned about the Islam version of hell and not the Christian. You wouldn't even think about Christian version of hell. It's probably safe to assume you're not at all thinking right now about the Islam version of hell. The stress that you're under is completely by chance, by just the coincidence of your birth. Same with mine. My stressors were different because of the conditions of my birth. Same with Paul. So go ahead,
You
Paul.
said better. You said you were raised to be better. I just want to pick up on that for a moment. I'm assuming that the God you believed in and the God you maybe still are holding on to has nothing to fear from truth, right? There is no God that any truth could harm them. So pursuing
Yeah.
truth can never harm an actual God, right? And I'm assuming that your parents, even though they might disagree with you on what is true, that they would probably say that the higher meta value ahead of what the religion is that we're ultimately seeing truth. That's why Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And the value in Christianity, if it's true, is that it is true. I think you mentioned that earlier in the call. So when you're thinking of the word better, I want you to make sure that you're not putting God as the pinnacle of that, and that you are putting what's true is the pinnacle of that. And I hope your parents and your family would agree that as long as you are seeking truth, if they're confident that their view is true, that you seeking truth could never be against that virtue. And so I would just encourage you. I don't want you to think that believing God is better than not believing God. Seeking truth, hopefully everyone can agree that that is the ultimate goal, and that as long as you're truth seeking, you will be at least in some way aligned with what your family raised you to do.
So Trinity,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead. Let me cut you off.
I don't know. It's fine. My family's just very, very religious. So if they heard that I believe in evolution at all, they'd blow up. So it's fine.
I was going to ask that, putting aside the afterlife issue, what are the immediate consequences of you leaving? Because that's a whole nother, conversation to be had there. It sounds like, yeah, you would have some very real repercussions if you were to, either uh, leave the religion, declare yourself something other than what your family expects you to be, and that's a whole other conversation to have. Um, but like I said, it's a hard situation to be in. I absolutely feel for you. My heart goes out to you because this is a very real struggle. These are struggles that you don't deserve. You don't deserve to have been born into a situation where now you're in a position of, I have to think about eternal torment. I have to potentially sacrifice relationships because I want to be intellectually honest. Like, you don't deserve that. This shouldn't have happened to you. Unfortunately, reality is the way it is, and it did happen to you. So you just got advice from two dudes who are more sci-fi nerds than religious intellectuals. What I really recommend you do is go to the Recovering from Religion website. It's recoveringfromreligion.org. It's a nonprofit charity society helpline. You can call in for free and talk to individuals who can expand on these conversations we just had. They can answer your questions probably way better than we can, give you resources and support groups. You're in Alaska. Hopefully, you're near a populated city like, maybe like Anchorage or Fairbanks or Juneau. But
Not
there are
really,
people
but
around you. There's still the internet, at least. It's a great thing, though. I mean, like, it's as bad of a situation, like, being in this state is, you at least have the ability to reach out. Like, you're talking to me, I'm in Washington. Paul's clear across the continent over in Eastern Canada. At least you have some resources you can use that you can take advantage of. And Recovering from Religion is one of them. I really recommend you call them, talk to them. They'll give you some guidance and help that you need, and hopefully maybe direct you towards some local support if that's what you're interested in. And by all means, if you want, call us back. Call back when there's other folks on the line. Like, you can call back when I don't know who's some really empathic individuals here on the line, Paul,
Oh,
more than us.
Shannon is often a
Shannon's
go-to for
awesome. Yep,
all that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Call back when Shannon Q's here.
Arden's
Shannon
great.
Q actually
Yeah,
has Arden's great as well. Shannon actually has training in correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, counseling and psychology, right? Like,
not in counseling.
she would
She
have
has
a.
she has psychology, but not counseling.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. No, right. Check.
She's
Shannon
she.
can't
It's a
cash.
very careful distinction. It's the more qualified you are, the less you're more
Yes.
careful. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, you have resources available to you. Recovering from Religion is one of them. Doing what you're doing right now is another one. Do your best to reach out and contact others and get other opinions, get other ideas. And like I said before, don't worry about labels. Don't worry about the time. Do what you need to do for you, because Trinity, you're the focus of this, and you're the most important objective is your health and well-being, and your healthy mental state is what we want out of this. So, is there anything else you want to wrap up with before we let you go?
uh, I think that's good. Thank you. Yeah, thanks
All
a
right,
lot.
Trinity. All right.
All our
Hope
best.
we helped. Maybe,
Bye.
maybe just a little bit. Hope we helped just a little bit. All right, great. Thanks, Trinity.
Bye.
Yeah, I really feel for Trinity, because that's a tough situation to be in. It's agonizing. And like I said, I have a hard time relating because I've never had to deal with
Yeah.
fear of hell.
Everything Trinity said,
Yeah,
everything they said was me just not too long ago. So it's brighter days are ahead for Trinity.
yeah. But Trinity, I should have said this to you in person. You're on the right path, though. I think you're doing the right things. I think you are doing exactly what you should be doing. You're following your intellect, you're being honest with yourself, and you're braving these things, you're facing these things in spite of the threats of others. And that's to be commended. That's you're triumphing over the lies and machinations and the
Mm-hmm.
these things that religions do to us, you know. So yeah, kudos to you and good luck.